Cassie thought she did everything right. She was beautiful, she was kind, she was the most accommodating, the most available, the most effortful girl in the room. She worked harder than anyone. She bent herself into whatever shape she thought love needed to be, and she lost absolutely everything. Her best friend, her dignity, the version of herself that was actually worth choosing. Meanwhile, Maddy did none of that. She didn't perform. She didn't adjust. She didn't rehearse herself for anyone. She just showed up, completely, unapologetically herself. And the room moved around her. So what did Maddy know that Cassie didn't? It wasn't confidence, not the kind you perform. It wasn't beauty. They were both stunning. It wasn't even strength. Both of them went through things that would have broken most people. Maddy was chosen because she had already chosen herself. Cassie was chasing because she never had. And 3 seasons of Euphoria showed us exactly what that difference costs. Stay with me. Before we talk about what Cassie became, we need to understand what she was built on. Because Cassie was not always this. In the beginning, she was genuinely lovely, warm, generous, the kind of girl who made every room feel softer just by being in it. But underneath that warmth, there was a fracture, one that started long before any of the drama. Cassie's father was the first love of her life, the way fathers always are for daughters. He encouraged her ice skating, showed up for her, made her feel like she mattered. And then he left. Not just once, twice. The first time, he could no longer afford her skating lessons. And just like that, the dream he had built with her, gone. The man who told her she was special, gone. The second time, he just didn't come back. And somewhere in the space between those 2 absences, Cassie learned a lesson nobody sat her down and taught her, but that sank in deeper than anything a classroom ever could. Love is something that leaves when it stops being convenient. So if you want someone to stay, you have to be worth staying for. Every single day, no matter the cost. And Cassie spent the rest of her life trying to be worth staying for. She became the sweetest girl in the room, the most available, the one who never made things hard, the one who emptied her own cup to fill everyone else's. Because maybe if she gave enough, nobody else would leave the way her father did. The show puts it plainly. She fell in love with every guy she ever dated. Whether they were smart or stupid or sweet or cruel, it didn't matter. She didn't like to be alone. That one line, that is Cassie's entire story. Not about being naive, not about being weak. A story about a girl who learned that love is earned and who has been paying for it ever since. And I know how easy it is to think, I would never do that. I would never lose myself like that. But let me ask you something. When was the last time you swallowed an opinion because you weren't sure how it would land? When was the last time you got quieter in a room because you didn't feel quite certain you belonged? That is not a Cassie thing. That is a very, very common woman thing. It just looks like kindness from the outside. Now, let me show you what the alternative actually looks like.
Maddy Perez. Most people look at Maddy and see attitude, boldness, someone who was just born this way, confident in a way that feels almost unfair. But here is something the show tells us that most people gloss right over. Maddy's mother was an esthetician, and from a young age, Maddy would watch her work, and she noticed something. There are 2 kinds of women in that room. The women sitting in the chairs, feet in the foot bath, relaxed, being served, owning the space they're in. And the women kneeling in front of it, working, accommodating, disappearing into the service of someone else's comfort. Maddy watched her mother kneel, and she decided, very young, that she would be the woman in the chair. Now, people hear that and think, oh, she was just materialistic, she just wanted to be rich. But that is not what I see. What I see is a girl who looked at the two roles available to women in that room and refused the one that required her to make herself invisible. That is not greed. That is identity. Maddy studied magnetic women, not because she wanted to manipulate people, but because they showed her something she needed to see, that a woman's presence is not something to be apologized for. It is something to be decided. She said it herself. 90% of life is confidence. And the thing about confidence is, no one knows if it's real or not. Most people hear that as fake it. That is not what she is saying. What she is saying is your presence is a choice. How much space you take, how quickly you apologize for existing, how much you let someone's words sink in and stick. These are not things that happen to you. They are decisions. Did Maddy have a perfect life? Absolutely not. Her relationship with Nate was toxic and explosive, and she knew it. She said it made her sick to her stomach. Her parents were present, but in a dead, silent marriage for years. She was not untouched by pain. But, and this is the whole point, her identity was untouched. Slow and clean. Cassie had warmth. Maddy had principle. Warmth, you can give away. You can pour it into people who drain it. You can empty yourself trying to give enough of it to make someone stay. A principle? Nobody can take that from you. Not Nate, not a locked door, not a best friend's betrayal. It lives inside you, and it does not move.
Let me tell you what chasing actually does to a woman on the inside. Season 2. Cassie wakes up at 5 in the morning, before the sun, before school, and she is building the most polished version of herself for a person who hasn't claimed her. Every single day, she rehearsed herself, like she was auditioning for a role in her own life. Not because she's confident, because she's terrified that the real, uncurated version of her won't be enough. And here's the detail that breaks it open. When Nate finally starts noticing Cassie, it's because she started dressing like Maddy, becoming her best friend. She didn't just change her outfit, she erased herself and put on someone else's identity, just to be seen. That is what chasing does. It trains you to believe the real you is the obstacle, not the answer. Nobody in that story worked harder to be loved than Cassie. And the harder she worked, the less of herself was left. Maddy finds out. Her best friend, her ex, behind her back. Watch the quality of how she handles it. She doesn't collapse, doesn't beg for an explanation, doesn't forgive immediately because she can't bear the loss. She waits for her moment. And when it comes, heels off, through the crowd, making it clear this isn't over until she says it's over. 4 words. This is just the beginning. She doesn't cry in that bathroom. Cassie does. She doesn't beg, she warns. Maddy wasn't calm because she didn't care. This cost her something real, but her standard didn't move. The woman who is chosen doesn't fall apart when someone violates her, because her sense of self isn't located inside that person. She's okay because who she is isn't on the table. The woman who is chasing has placed her worth in someone else's hands. When that person pulls away, there's nothing left underneath. She doesn't get angry. She gets desperate. Cassie crying in the bathroom, Maddy walking out of it. 2 women. Same moment, completely different foundations. 5 years later, and what season 3 shows us in its first few minutes is almost brutal in its honesty. Because both women got what they wanted. Cassie got Nate, the suburbs, the big house, and she's described as addicted to social media, envious of the lives her old classmates appear to be living. Envious. After everything she sacrificed, after the friends she lost, after the version of herself she gave away piece by piece, she got everything she asked for, and she still doesn't feel chosen. Because you cannot chase your way into belonging. You can only perform your way into a version of it that always needs one more thing to feel real. She's seen crying at her own wedding, not because the marriage is hollow, but because the performance she built her whole life toward is threatened. Maddy left, moved to Hollywood, started at the bottom, the unglamorous version, and worked her way up. Then she became a manager, the woman who decides who gets built, who gets packaged for the world. Her first client?
Cassie, the woman who stole her boyfriend, wore her identity like a costume to be chosen over her. Maddy made her a client, not out of forgiveness, but because Maddy has always known something Cassie is still learning. When you know who you are, what other people did to you doesn't define your next move. You do. She's the one in the chair now, literally. She took the thing she learned watching her mother kneel and turned it into a career. The finale's last image of Cassie, the camera pulls back on her content house, and from a distance, it looks exactly like a dollhouse. A woman in a glass box, still arranged for an audience. Nate is gone. The debt is paid, and Cassie is still performing. Not for him anymore, but the habit is too deep to break. Maddy paid off that debt, quietly. Walked in, handed over the money, walked back out. Not because she owed Cassie anything, but because she decides what she carries, and she chose to put that chapter down. That's the whole arc. Two women, same world, same fire. One learned to be chosen by learning to choose herself. One spent 3 seasons trying to earn it from everyone else and arrived still waiting. Here's what I want to leave you with. This isn't about Maddy being right and Cassie being wrong. That's too easy, and it misses everything. This is about 2 patterns, 2 ways of showing up when you're not sure if you're enough. The woman who is chosen isn't fearless or perfect. She just has a standard she doesn't negotiate. A sense of self that doesn't live in someone else's opinion. The woman who is chasing isn't weak or stupid. She learned somewhere, very young, that love is conditional. That who she is without the performance might not be enough. And she's been performing ever since. I know which one I was. The girl who changed her answer when she sensed it wouldn't land well. Who replayed conversations at 2 a.m., who got quieter in rooms, not because she had nothing to say, but because she wasn't sure it would land. Not because I was broken, because I'd been taught, like Cassie was, that love has conditions, that you have to earn your place. The shift didn't come from becoming more confident. It came from one decision. I am going to choose myself first, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs me, even when no one is watching. That's all Maddy ever did. She wasn't fearless. She was decided. And when your worth lives inside you, you stop chasing because you no longer need to. You become the woman people can't stop thinking about. Not because you performed it, because you finally stopped. The question isn't whether you're more like Maddy or Cassie. Most of us are both. In different rooms, on different days. The question is, which woman are you becoming? You just unlocked another layer at RDream Vault, where we take the characters you love, the shows you binge, and the stories you can't forget, and we ask the questions that change everything. Because understanding them, that's how you understand you. So if you're ready to see your favorite stories differently, if you're ready to decode the meaning behind the drama, if you're becoming this person too, hit that subscribe button. Join the vault.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep questioning, and keep unlocking your vault. See you in the next unlock.